The morning mist hung heavy over Balmoral Castle, as Sergeant William Hayes adjusted his ceremonial uniform for the third time. After 22 years of faithful service to the Crown, his hands had never trembled while fastening the golden buttons of his Royal Guard jacket. Today was different. Something in the air felt wrong, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. William had served under 3 monarchs during his distinguished career. He had protected Queen Elizabeth during her final years, stood guard during the transition to King Charles, and now found himself responsible for the safety of Queen Camilla during her private retreats to the Scottish Highlands. His record was spotless, his dedication unwavering, and his reputation among the Royal Protection Unit was legendary. The castle's ancient stones seemed to whisper secrets as William made his morning rounds. Balmoral had always been a place of mystery, with its countless rooms, hidden passages, and areas that remained off-limits even to senior staff. The restricted wing on the castle's eastern side was one such place, sealed off for decades and accessible only to the most senior members of the royal household. Queen Camilla had arrived the previous evening for what was supposed to be a quiet weekend retreat. She had seemed unusually restless during dinner, asking strange questions about the castle's history and making cryptic comments about family secrets that needed to be uncovered. The other staff members had dismissed her remarks as mere curiosity, but William had noticed the intensity in her eyes. As the head of security for this visit, William had personally briefed his team about the restricted areas. The Eastern Wing was absolutely forbidden to all visitors, including members of the royal family, without explicit written permission from the king himself. The ancient oak doors leading to those chambers had remained, locked for so long that most people had forgotten what lay beyond them. The morning progressed normally until William received an urgent radio call from Corporal Jenkins, one of his most trusted guards. Jenkins had been monitoring the security cameras when he noticed something alarming. Queen Camilla had been seen walking alone through corridors that should have been empty, heading directly toward the restricted Eastern Wing. William's blood ran cold. Protocol demanded that he immediately locate the Queen and escort her away from any unauthorized areas. He had dealt with curious royals before, but this situation felt different. The Eastern Wing contained secrets that even he, with his highest security clearance, was not fully aware of. He knew only that those rooms held documents and artifacts considered too sensitive for public knowledge. Racing through the castle's maze-like corridors, William's mind raced with possibilities. Perhaps the Queen had simply lost her way in the vast castle. Maybe she was searching for a bathroom or had become confused by the similar-looking hallways. He tried to convince himself that there was an innocent explanation, but his instincts told him otherwise. The sound of his polished boots echoed against the stone floors as he hurried toward the Eastern Wing. Other guards he passed looked puzzled by his urgency, but none questioned the determination in his expression. William had trained them well to trust his judgment, especially when it came to potential security breaches. When he reached the corridor leading to the restricted area, William paused to catch his breath and gather his thoughts. 22 years of service had taught him the importance of remaining calm under pressure. He adjusted his earpiece and quietly radioed his position to the command center, following standard protocol for any situation involving unauthorized access to sensitive areas. The heavy oak doors that marked the entrance to the Eastern Wing stood slightly ajar. William's heart sank as he realized his worst fears were confirmed. Someone had not only accessed the restricted area, but had left the doors open, compromising the security of whatever lay beyond. His training kicked in as he approached the entrance with careful, measured steps. The ancient hinges creaked softly as William pushed the door open wider. The air inside felt different, carrying the musty scent of old documents and something else he couldn't identify. Dust particles danced in the pale morning light that filtered through tall, narrow windows. The corridor beyond was lined with portraits of long-dead royals, their painted eyes seeming to watch his every movement. William's radio crackled with reports from other guards confirming that Queen Camilla was indeed missing from her scheduled morning activities. The kitchen staff had prepared her breakfast, but she had not appeared in the dining room. Her lady-in-waiting had been waiting outside her chambers for over an hour, without any response to her gentle knocking. As he ventured deeper into the restricted wing, William began to understand why this area had been sealed off for so long. The rooms contained filing cabinets filled with documents bearing royal seals, glass cases displaying artifacts of unknown origin, and walls covered with genealogical charts that seemed to tell stories different from the official royal histories taught in schools. The sound of papers rustling came from a room at the end of the corridor. William approached slowly, his hand instinctively moving to the radio at his belt. Through the partially open doorway, he could see Queen Camilla sitting at an ornate wooden desk, carefully examining what appeared to be a leather-bound journal. Her usually perfect composure was replaced by an expression of intense concentration and growing shock. William knew he had to act quickly but diplomatically. Confronting a member of the royal family required delicate handling, especially when they were engaging in unauthorized activities. He had been trained to protect the royals not only from external threats, but also from situations that might compromise their reputation or the monarchy's stability. Taking a deep breath, William stepped into the doorway and cleared his throat softly. Queen Camilla looked up, her eyes wide with surprise and something that looked like fear. In her hands was an old photograph that she quickly attempted to hide beneath other papers on the desk. The moment their eyes met, William realized that this situation was far more complex than a simple case of royal curiosity. The Queen's expression revealed that she had discovered something significant, something that had shaken her to her core. Whatever secrets the Eastern Wing contained, they were about to change everything he thought he knew about his duty to protect the crown. The tension in the room was palpable as both the seasoned guard and the Queen faced a moment that would test everything they believed about loyalty, duty, and the price of truth. William's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his radio, knowing that the next few minutes would define not only his career, but possibly the future of the monarchy itself. Queen Camilla's face had turned pale as moonlight, her hands shaking as she tried to compose herself. The photograph she had been studying lay face down on the desk, but William could see the corner of what appeared to be an old family portrait. The silence in the room stretched uncomfortably as both realized the gravity of the situation they now faced together. "Your Majesty," William began carefully, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind, "I must ask you to step away from those documents immediately. This area is restricted for security reasons, and I'm required to escort you back to the main castle." Queen Camilla looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold decades of questions. She had always been known for her strong will and determination, qualities that had helped her navigate the complexities of royal life. But now, sitting in this forbidden room surrounded by secrets, she appeared vulnerable and uncertain. "Sergeant Hayes," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, "how long have you served this family?" The question seemed innocent enough, but William sensed deeper meaning behind her words. His training had taught him to be cautious when royals asked personal questions during tense situations. 22 years. "Your Majesty," he replied, maintaining his professional stance despite wanting to understand what had disturbed her so deeply. "I've had the honor of serving 3 monarchs during my career, and my loyalty to the crown has never wavered." The Queen studied his face for a long moment, as if weighing whether she could trust him with whatever revelation had shaken her world. The morning light streaming through the windows cast strange shadows across the room, making the portraits on the walls seem alive and watchful. "Tell me, Sergeant," she continued, "in all your years of service, have you ever questioned whether the truth you've been protecting is worth the lies it requires?" Her words hit William like a physical blow. In his entire career, he had never heard a member of the royal family speak so directly about the contradictions inherent in their position. William's training warred with his human curiosity. Protocol demanded that he remove the Queen from this unauthorized area immediately and report the incident to his superiors. But something in her expression made him hesitate. She wasn't acting like someone who had simply wandered into a restricted area by accident. This felt deliberate, purposeful, and deeply personal. "Your Majesty, I'm not qualified to discuss such matters," he replied carefully. "My duty is to ensure your safety and security, which means following established protocols. I must insist that we leave this area immediately." Queen Camilla stood slowly, but instead of moving toward the door, she walked to one of the tall windows overlooking the Scottish Highlands. The view was spectacular, with rolling hills stretching toward the horizon under a gray sky that threatened rain. For a moment she seemed lost in thought, as if the landscape held answers to questions she was afraid to ask. "Do you know what this room contains, Sergeant Hayes?" she asked without turning around. "Do you know why it's been sealed away from the world for so long?" Her questions made William increasingly uncomfortable. His security briefings had never included detailed information about the contents of restricted areas, only strict instructions about who was and wasn't allowed access. "I know only what I need to know to perform my duties, Your Majesty," he answered honestly. "The specific contents of this wing are classified above my clearance level." It was true, but even as he spoke the words, William found himself burning with curiosity about what could be so sensitive that even senior security personnel were kept in the dark. Queen Camilla turned back to face him, and William was startled to see tears forming in her eyes. In all his years of service, he had rarely seen members of the royal family display such raw emotion. They were trained from birth to maintain composure under all circumstances, to never let the public see them as anything less than perfectly controlled. "This room contains the real history of our family," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. Not the sanitized version taught in schools or displayed in public museums, but the truth about decisions made in dark rooms, about people whose lives were destroyed to protect an image, about children who were hidden away because they didn't fit the story we wanted to tell the world. William felt his world tilting on its axis. These were not the words he expected to hear from someone whose life he had sworn to protect. The royal family was supposed to represent stability, tradition, and moral authority. To hear one of its members questioning the very foundation of that authority was deeply disturbing. His radio crackled to life, breaking the tense atmosphere in the room. Corporal Jenkins was requesting an update on the Queen's location, and other guards were beginning to worry about the extended search. William knew he had to make a decision that would affect not only his career, but potentially his entire understanding of his role as a protector of the crown. "Your Majesty," he said, reaching for his radio, "I need to report your safe location to my team. They're beginning to worry about a possible security threat." His hand hovered over the device, waiting for her response. Queen Camilla walked back to the desk and picked up the photograph she had been studying. She stared at it for a long moment before turning it so William could see the image. It showed a young woman holding a baby, standing next to a man in military uniform who bore a striking resemblance to the late Prince Philip. "This is my grandmother," she said quietly, "or at least the woman I was told was my grandmother. But according to the documents in this room, that was a lie. My real grandmother was considered unsuitable for the family image, so she was erased from history and replaced with someone more acceptable." William stared at the photograph, his mind struggling to process the implications of what Queen Camilla was telling him. If what she said was true, it meant that the official genealogies, the carefully maintained family trees that justified the monarchy's very existence, contained deliberate falsifications. The weight of this revelation pressed down on him like a physical force. For 22 years he had dedicated his life to protecting an institution he believed represented honor, duty, and truth. Now he was being told that the foundation of that institution was built on lies that had been carefully maintained for generations. His radio crackled again, more urgently this time. Other guards were requesting permission to expand their search, and someone mentioned the possibility of contacting local police if the Queen wasn't located soon. William realized that he was rapidly approaching a point of no return, where his next actions would define not only his future, but potentially the future of the monarchy itself. Queen Camilla was watching him carefully, gauging his reaction to her revelation. In her eyes he could see a mixture of pain, determination, and something that looked like hope. She had chosen to trust him with information that could shake the very foundations of the British monarchy, and now she was waiting to see what he would do with that trust. William's hand trembled as he slowly lowered his radio without making the call. The decision felt like stepping off a cliff into unknown territory, abandoning 22 years of unwavering protocol for something he couldn't yet understand. Queen Camilla noticed his hesitation and nodded slightly, as if recognizing the magnitude of the choice he was making. "Show me," William said quietly, his voice barely audible in the dusty room. "Show me what you found." The words felt strange, coming from his mouth, a departure from every rule of conduct he had ever learned, but something deeper than duty was driving him now. A need to understand the truth behind the institution he had served so faithfully. Queen Camilla's expression softened with relief and gratitude. She had taken an enormous risk by revealing what she had discovered, and William's willingness to listen rather than simply follow orders seemed to validate her decision. Moving to a large filing cabinet in the corner of the room, she withdrew a thick folder marked with official seals and warning labels. "It started 3 days ago," she explained, opening the folder carefully. "I received an anonymous letter at my private residence containing only an address and a key. The address led me to a storage facility in London, where I found a safety deposit box filled with documents and photographs. Everything pointed to this room, to secrets that have been hidden here for decades." William examined the documents she spread across the desk. They included birth certificates with names that had been crossed out and replaced, death certificates for people who supposedly died years after their recorded deaths, and official correspondence between high-ranking government officials discussing the need to maintain public confidence through selective information management. One document particularly caught his attention. It was a memorandum from 1952, signed by officials whose names he recognized from history books. The memo discussed the necessity of narrative consistency and outlined procedures for handling information that might damage public faith in institutional stability. The language was formal and bureaucratic, but the meaning was clear. Truth would be sacrificed when it conflicted with public perception. "There are dozens of cases," Queen Camilla continued, her voice growing stronger as she shared the burden she had been carrying alone. "Children born to unmarried royals who were secretly adopted by other families, political alliances that were hidden because they would have been unpopular, financial dealings that would have caused scandals if made public. All of it carefully documented and then hidden away." William found himself thinking about his own family history. His grandfather had been a devoted monarchist who had served in World War II and spoken with pride about fighting for king and country. His father had continued that tradition of service, working as a palace guard before William followed in his footsteps. The idea that the institution they had served with such dedication was built on systematic deception felt like a betrayal of everything his family had believed in. The radio on his belt continued to crackle with increasingly urgent communications from his team. He could hear the worry in their voices as they reported their failure to locate the Queen in any of the authorized areas of the castle. Soon they would begin searching the restricted areas, and his absence from his post would be noticed. "Your Majesty," William said carefully, "assuming everything you've shown me is authentic, what do you intend to do with this information?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that both understood but neither wanted to voice directly. Queen Camilla walked to another cabinet and withdrew a leather journal bound with a silk ribbon. "This belonged to Queen Mary," she said, referring to King George V's wife. "It contains her private thoughts about the decisions she was forced to make to protect the monarchy's reputation. Listen to this entry from 1936. She opened the journal to a page marked with a faded bookmark and began to read. "Today, we made another choice to preserve the illusion over the reality. A young mother came to us seeking acknowledgement of her child's royal parentage, but we cannot afford such truth. The public needs their fairy tale more than this woman needs justice. I pray that future generations will forgive us for choosing expedience over honesty." William felt a chill run down his spine. The words in Queen Mary's journal revealed a pattern of deliberate deception spanning generations, a conscious choice by royal family members to prioritize public perception over truth. It painted a picture of an institution that had systematically sacrificed individual lives and authentic history to maintain its image and power. "There are hundreds of entries like this," Queen Camilla continued, "spanning decades of royal history, each generation faced with the same choice: reveal uncomfortable truths and risk public confidence, or maintain the carefully constructed narrative that keeps the monarchy stable and supported." The sound of footsteps in the corridor outside made both of them freeze. William recognized the heavy boots of his security team approaching the restricted area. His colleagues were following protocol, beginning to search unauthorized areas when their initial sweep had failed to locate the Queen. In moments, they would discover the open doors and breach the eastern wing. "We need to make a decision right now," William whispered urgently. "Either I report this as a security incident and we all pretend this conversation never happened, or we find another way forward. But there's no middle ground here." Queen Camilla, closed the journal and looked directly into William's eyes. "Sergeant Hayes, I've spent years wondering why I always felt like I was living someone else's life, playing a role in someone else's story. Now I understand that's exactly what I've been doing. We all have. The question is whether we're brave enough to stop." The footsteps in the corridor were getting closer, and William could hear familiar voices coordinating their search pattern. In minutes, possibly seconds, Corporal Jenkins and the others would reach the door to this room and discover them both. Surrounded by evidence of the monarchy's most carefully guarded secrets, William's mind raced through his options. He could signal his team, explain that he had found the Queen in an unauthorized area, and escort her back to safety while reporting the incident through proper channels. It would preserve his career and maintain the established order. But it would also mean burying the truth that Queen Camilla had trusted him to witness. Alternatively, he could help her continue her investigation, protecting her access to these documents while she decided what to do with the information they contained. It would mean violating his oath of service and potentially destroying his career. But it might also mean serving a higher truth than the one he had been trained to protect. The voices in the corridor were now close enough that he could make out individual words. Corporal Jenkins was directing other guards to check each room systematically, following the protocol William himself had established for thorough security sweeps. They would reach this room within minutes. Queen Camilla gathered the most important documents and photographs, stuffing them into a leather satchel she had brought with her. "Whatever you decide, Sergeant Hayes, I want you to know that your willingness to listen has meant more to me than you can imagine. For the first time in years, I don't feel completely alone with these terrible truths." William looked at her, then at the documents scattered across the desk, then at the door through which his colleagues would soon appear. 22 years of faithful service had brought him to this moment, where he had to choose between the duty he had always known and a truth he was only beginning to understand. The sound of approaching footsteps gave William no more time to think. Acting on pure instinct, he quickly helped Queen Camilla gather the remaining documents and guided her toward a second door he had noticed at the far end of the room. His years of studying castle layouts during security preparations had taught him that many of these older rooms had multiple exits, designed in an era when quick escapes might mean the difference between life and death. "This way, Your Majesty," he whispered, opening the door to reveal a narrow stone staircase that seemed to descend into darkness. The air that drifted up from below was cold and carried the scent of ancient stone and something else he couldn't identify. Without hesitation, Queen Camilla stepped through the doorway, clutching her leather satchel tightly. Just as they closed the door behind them, William heard Corporal Jenkins and two other guards enter the main room they had just vacated. Through the thick stone walls, he could hear their voices expressing surprise at finding the restricted area unlocked and showing signs of recent activity. His colleagues were following protocol exactly as he had trained them, but now their efficiency worked against him. The narrow staircase spiraled downward into what appeared to be the castle's ancient foundation levels. William had studied Balmoral's architecture during his security briefings, but these passages had never appeared on any official floor plan. The walls were rough-hewn stone, much older than the renovated sections of the castle above, suggesting they dated back to the original fortress that had stood on this site centuries earlier. Queen Camilla moved carefully down the steps, using her phone's flashlight to illuminate their path. The narrow beam revealed that the passage continued much farther than either of them had expected, descending deep into the hillside beneath the castle. William's security training made him acutely aware of the risks they were taking by venturing into an unmapped area, without backup or communication with the outside world. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, his voice echoing strangely in the confined space, "we need to discuss what happens next. My team will soon realize that both of us are missing, and they'll begin a castle-wide search. If we're going to continue this investigation, we need a plan that doesn't end with both of us facing charges for unauthorized access to classified materials." Queen Camilla paused on the stairs and turned to face him. In the dim light from her phone, her expression was determined but also frightened. "Sergeant Hayes, I understand the position I've put you in, and I'm grateful for your help. But I can't stop now. What I've discovered changes everything I thought I knew about my family, about my role, about the very foundations of the institution I represent." They continued descending until the staircase ended at a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron bands. The door was old but well maintained, suggesting that someone had been caring for these hidden passages even though they didn't appear on any official maps. Queen Camilla tried the handle and found it unlocked, opening to reveal an underground chamber that took both of their breaths away. The room beyond was enormous, carved directly from the living rock beneath Balmoral Castle. The walls were lined with shelves containing hundreds of leather-bound volumes, filing cabinets with locks that had been broken long ago, and glass cases displaying artifacts that seemed to span centuries of royal history. But what dominated the chamber was a massive table in the center, covered with documents, photographs, and genealogical charts that appeared to tell a very different story of the British royal family than any official history. "My God," Queen Camilla whispered, her voice echoing in the vast space. "How long has this place existed? How many people knew about it?" She moved toward the central table, her phone's light revealing layers of documents that seemed to have been accumulated over decades, possibly longer. William's security instincts were screaming warnings at him. This underground chamber represented a massive breach of everything he thought he knew about Balmoral's security. The existence of such a space, completely unknown to the protection services, suggested either a catastrophic failure in intelligence gathering or a deliberate conspiracy to keep certain information hidden from those responsible for royal security. Moving closer to examine the documents on the table, William began to understand the scope of what they had discovered. The papers were organized into family groups, each containing official documents alongside unofficial records that told dramatically different stories, birth certificates that didn't match royal genealogies, marriage records for unions that had never been publicly acknowledged, and death certificates for people who had supposedly lived much longer than official histories suggested. One section of the table was devoted entirely to photographs spanning several generations. Many showed people in royal settings who didn't appear in any official family portraits, children playing in palace gardens who had been erased from public memory, adults attending state functions who had been written out of historical records, and gatherings that suggested the royal family was much larger and more complex than the public had ever been told. Queen Camilla was studying a particular photograph with intense concentration. It showed a young woman who bore a striking resemblance to her, standing beside King George II and Queen Elizabeth, later the Queen Mother, in what appeared to be an informal family gathering. The woman was holding a baby, and someone had written names and dates on the back of the photograph in elegant handwriting. "This is my grandmother," she said, her voice filled with wonder and pain. The real one, not the woman I was told was my grandmother. According to these documents, she was the daughter of a Scottish merchant who caught the eye of a young prince. They had a secret marriage that was never officially recognized, and when she became pregnant, the family decided she was unsuitable for public acknowledgement. William examined the supporting documents that Queen Camilla had found alongside the photograph. They painted a heartbreaking picture of a young woman who had been promised marriage and acceptance, only to be cast aside when political considerations made her inconvenient. She had been provided with a modest income and a small house in Scotland, but forced to agree that she would never publicly claim her relationship to the royal family. "There are dozens of similar cases," Queen Camilla continued, spreading more photographs across the table. Secret marriages, unofficial adoptions, children who were hidden away because they didn't fit the image the family wanted to project. All of them documented here, preserved as evidence but kept hidden from the world. The implications of what they were discovering made William's head spin. If even a fraction of these documents were authentic, they revealed a pattern of deception and abandonment that spanned generations of royal history. The carefully maintained image of the royal family as moral exemplars and devoted spouses was built on a foundation of denied relationships and abandoned children. His radio crackled to life, the signal somehow penetrating even to this underground chamber. Corporal Jenkins was reporting that both the Queen and Sergeant Hayes were now missing, and requesting permission to initiate emergency protocols. The search was being expanded to include grounds outside the castle, and consideration was being given to alerting local police and emergency services. "We're running out of time," William said urgently. "Soon they'll discover the entrance we used, and this entire chamber will be compromised. If these documents are as significant as they appear to be, we need to decide immediately what to do with them." Queen Camilla looked around the chamber with an expression of overwhelming sadness and determination. "Sergeant Hayes, everything I've believed about my family, about my role, about the sacrifices that were necessary to maintain the monarchy's stability. It's all been based on lies. These people weren't sacrificed for the greater good. They were abandoned to protect an image that was never real in the first place. The sound of distant voices echoed down the staircase they had used to enter the chamber. William's team had found the hidden door and were beginning to follow their trail into the underground passages. Within minutes, possibly less, they would discover this secret archive and everything it contained. William faced the most critical decision of his career and his life. He could call out to his approaching colleagues, reveal their location, and allow this discovery to be handled through official channels that would almost certainly result in everything being classified and hidden away again. Or he could help Queen Camilla preserve and protect evidence that could fundamentally change how the world understood the British monarchy. The voices were getting closer, and William could now make out individual words as his team coordinated their search of the underground passages. Time was almost up, and whatever choice he made in the next few moments would determine not only his own future, but potentially the future of an institution that millions of people around the world looked to for stability and moral guidance. William's composure finally cracked. 22 years of disciplined service, of following orders without question, of believing in the nobility of his mission collapsed in an instant. The weight of revelation, the pressure of impossible choices, and the sound of his own team closing in on their location overwhelmed his carefully maintained professional facade. "This is madness," he shouted, his voice echoing through the underground chamber with surprising force. Queen Camilla stepped back, startled by the sudden outburst from a man who had maintained perfect control throughout their entire ordeal. "Do you understand what you're asking me to do? You're asking me to betray everything I've ever believed in, everything my family has served for generations." His hand shook as he grabbed one of the photographs from the table, staring at it with wild eyes. "These people, these secrets, these lies you've shown me. They're going to destroy everything. The monarchy, the government, the faith that millions of people have in institutions that are supposed to represent honor and duty. Is your need for truth worth the chaos that will follow?" Queen Camilla watched him with a mixture of concern and understanding. She had experienced her own breakdown when first confronting these revelations, and she recognized the signs of a mind struggling to reconcile conflicting loyalties. "Sergeant Hayes," she said gently, "I know this is overwhelming. I've been dealing with these discoveries for days, and I still feel like my world has been turned upside down." But William was beyond gentle reassurance. His voice rose even higher as his panic consumed him. "My grandfather died believing he had served something worthy. My father spent his entire career protecting people he thought represented the best of our society. And now you're telling me it was all based on lies? That we've been protecting criminals and frauds and people who abandoned their own children to maintain their precious image?" The approaching voices stopped suddenly, and William realized his shouting had revealed their location to his search team. Corporal Jenkins called out from somewhere in the passage above, asking if he had heard someone yelling and requesting immediate response. The game was up, and William's breakdown had ensured there would be no quiet resolution to their crisis. "Sir, Sergeant Hayes, sir, we can hear voices from your location. Please respond immediately." Jenkins's voice carried the urgency of a security professional who feared his commanding officer might be under duress. Within moments, the chamber would be flooded with armed guards following emergency protocols for a potential hostage situation. William laughed bitterly, a sound completely devoid of humor. "Respond? How do I respond to this, Jenkins? How do I explain that the Queen of England has discovered that her entire family history is a fabrication? How do I report that the institution we've sworn to protect is built on a foundation of abandoned children and covered-up scandals?" Queen Camilla moved toward him with the careful steps of someone approaching a wounded animal. "William," she said, using his first name for the first time, "please listen to me. I understand your anger and your fear, but we still have choices to make, and we need to make them together." "Choices?" William's voice cracked with emotion. "What choices do we have? If we reveal this information, we destroy the monarchy and probably the government along with it. If we hide it, we become part of the same conspiracy that's been lying to the world for generations. There are no good choices here, only different ways to betray people who trusted us." The sound of multiple footsteps on the stone stairs indicated that several guards were now descending toward their location. Jenkins was calling out status reports to someone above, probably coordinating with the main security center to ensure backup was available if needed. Standard protocol for a situation where senior personnel were unaccounted for in an unauthorized area. William suddenly grabbed Queen Camilla by the shoulders, his grip gentle but urgent. "Your Majesty, in about 30 seconds, this room is going to be filled with armed guards who will secure this area and classify everything we've discovered. Once that happens, you'll never have another chance to make these revelations public. If you're going to act on what you've learned, it has to be right now." Queen Camilla looked into his eyes and saw not just panic, but a desperate sincerity. Despite his breakdown, despite his shouting and obvious distress, he was still thinking about her choices and her mission. "What are you suggesting?" she asked quietly. "I'm suggesting that you take the most important documents and get out of here before my team secures this chamber," William said, his voice becoming more focused despite his emotional state. "There's probably another exit from this room. These old castle passages usually have multiple entrances. If you can escape with evidence, you might still have options." The voices were now very close, and they could see the first glimmers of flashlight beams dancing across the walls of the chamber. William's team had found them, and within moments the entire situation would be out of their hands. Whatever decision Queen Camilla made about the documents and their revelations, she had to make it immediately. "But what about you?" she asked, beginning to gather the most crucial documents from the table. "If I disappear with classified materials, you'll be held responsible. Your career will be destroyed and you might face criminal charges." William's laugh was bitter but somehow cleaner than before, as if his breakdown had purged some of his confusion. "Your Majesty, my career ended the moment I chose to help you continue this investigation instead of following protocol. At least if you escape with the evidence, my destruction might serve some purpose." Queen Camilla was stuffing documents into her satchel with desperate efficiency, selecting what appeared to be the most damaging evidence while leaving behind materials that might be considered less significant. Her movements were precise despite the pressure, suggesting she had already mentally prioritized which revelations were most important to preserve. "Sergeant Hayes, Your Majesty, please respond immediately." Corporal Jenkins's voice was now coming from just outside the chamber door. William could hear at least 3 different voices coordinating their approach, following protocols he had personally developed for securing potentially hostile areas. His own training was being used against him. William moved to the chamber door and called out, "Jenkins, I'm here with Her Majesty. We're both safe, but I need you to hold your position for 60 seconds while I assess the situation." It was a desperate gambit, trading on his authority and his team's trust to buy Queen Camilla precious time to complete her escape. "Sir, with respect, we need to see you both immediately," Jenkins replied, his voice carrying the strain of a subordinate caught between loyalty to his commander and adherence to protocol. "We have procedures for situations involving unauthorized access to classified areas, and those procedures don't include delays." William looked around the chamber frantically, searching for the alternate exit he had suggested to Queen Camilla. His eye caught a section of the far wall where the stone looked slightly different, newer somehow, as if it had been modified or repaired. Moving closer, he could see the faint outline of what might be another door, hidden behind what appeared to be a movable stone panel. "There," he whispered urgently, pointing toward the hidden door. "That has to be another way out. These old castle designs always included escape routes in case of siege or attack." Queen Camilla followed his gaze and immediately understood what he had found. The hidden door was operated by a simple lever mechanism disguised as a decorative element in the stone carving. When William pressed it, a section of the wall swung inward to reveal another passage, this one leading upward at a gentle angle. Fresh air flowed through the opening, suggesting it connected to the outside world rather than simply leading to another underground chamber. "Go now," William urged, helping her adjust the satchel strap across her shoulder. "This passage probably leads to somewhere on the castle grounds, maybe even beyond the security perimeter. Once you're clear, you'll have time to decide what to do with what you've learned." Queen Camilla paused at the threshold of the hidden passage, looking back at William with an expression of profound gratitude mixed with sorrow. "What will you tell them about what happened here? How will you explain your actions?" William straightened his uniform and tried to compose himself, though traces of his emotional breakdown were still visible in his face. "I'll tell them the truth about everything except your escape. I'll say we discovered this chamber together, that I lost my composure when confronted with evidence that challenged everything I believed about my duty. They'll assume you're still here somewhere hidden in the passages. Sir, Jenkins called out again, his voice now carrying the edge of someone whose patience was exhausted. I'm coming in now with or without your permission. We have protocols to follow. William turned toward the chamber entrance, placing himself between the approaching guards and the hidden door through which Queen Camilla was escaping. Jenkins, I'm ordering you to hold your position for 30 more seconds. That's a direct command from your superior officer. The sound of Queen Camilla's footsteps faded quickly as she moved through the hidden passage. William hoped desperately that it would lead her to safety, that she would have the opportunity to decide carefully, erased from official histories and events that contradicted the carefully maintained public narrative. Your Majesty, Sarah said after reviewing the materials for nearly an hour. These documents appear to be authentic and the implications are staggering. But I need you to understand that once this story is published, there will be no controlling how it develops. Other journalists will investigate every detail. Government officials will demand explanations, and the entire institution of the monarchy will face scrutiny unlike anything in modern history. Queen Camilla looked out the tea shop window and saw a black SUV with government plates pulling into the village center. Her time was running out, and whatever decision she made about the documents would have to be made immediately. The choice between protecting institutional stability and revealing institutional dishonesty was no longer theoretical. It was here now, demanding action. Ms. Blackwood, she said, gathering the documents back into her satchel, I need 1 more hour to make a final decision. Can you give me that much time before you decide whether to proceed with publication? The journalist nodded, understanding the magnitude of the choice Queen Camilla faced. I'll wait for your call, Your Majesty, but I should tell you that if you decide to move forward, this story will change everything. There will be no going back to the way things were before. As Queen Camilla left the tea shop through a back entrance, she could see security personnel beginning to move through the village, conducting what appeared to be a systematic search for her location. The final act of her personal drama was about to begin, and she still didn't know how she wanted it to end. Queen Camilla walked through the Highland countryside with purpose now, no longer running from her responsibilities but moving toward a decision that would define the rest of her life. The satchel of documents felt lighter somehow, as if approaching clarity about her choice had reduced the physical weight of the truth she carried. Behind her, she could hear the distant sound of vehicles as security teams continued their search, but she was no longer afraid of being found. She made her way to an ancient stone circle that sat on a hill overlooking Ballater village, a place that had witnessed thousands of years of human history. The standing stones were weathered by centuries of highland storms, yet they remained exactly where they had been placed by people whose names were forgotten, but whose commitment to permanence had outlasted empires. It seemed like an appropriate place to make a decision about the relationship between truth and stability. Her phone rang with a call from King Charles himself. She answered immediately, knowing that her husband deserved to hear her explanation directly rather than learning about her actions through security reports. Charles, she said simply, her voice carrying both sadness and determination. Camilla, thank God you're safe. The king's voice was tight with worry and confusion. William Hayes has been relieved of duty and is under investigation for his conduct today. He's claimed that you discovered some kind of archive in the castle's restricted areas. I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Queen Camilla sat on one of the ancient stones and looked across the valley toward Balmoral Castle, where this extraordinary day had begun. Charles, I found documentation of decades of family secrets that have been hidden from the public. Evidence of abandoned children, falsified genealogies, and systematic deception designed to maintain an image that was never authentic. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly a minute before King Charles responded. Camilla, every family has complicated histories, especially families that have been in public life for generations. The information you found was classified for good reasons. It would serve no purpose to make such matters public now. No purpose except giving voice to people who were silenced and abandoned by their own family, Queen Camilla replied, her voice growing stronger. Charles, I found records of children who were denied acknowledgement of their parentage, women who were promised marriage and then cast aside, entire branches of the family tree that were pruned away because they didn't fit the narrative we wanted to present to the world. King Charles's tone became more formal, taking on the authority of someone accustomed to command. Camilla, I'm ordering you to return to the castle immediately and surrender any materials you may have taken from the restricted areas. This matter will be handled through proper channels, and there will be no unauthorized disclosures of sensitive family information. Queen Camilla felt a strange sense of peace settling over her as she realized that her decision was already made. Charles, with all due respect, I don't think I can follow that order. The people whose stories are documented in these materials deserved better from us. They deserved honesty, acknowledgement, and justice. Instead, they got silence and abandonment. She could hear other voices in the background of King Charles's call, advisors and officials who were probably coordinating the response to this unprecedented crisis. The machinery of institutional damage control was already in motion, preparing to contain and minimize whatever revelations might emerge from Queen Camilla's discoveries. Camilla, listen to me carefully, King Charles said, his voice now carrying the weight of both personal plea and royal command. If you make these materials public, you won't just be damaging the monarchy. You'll be undermining the stability of the entire constitutional system. The government, the Commonwealth realms, the millions of people who depend on these institutions for their sense of national identity, all of it will be affected by what you choose to do in the next few hours. Queen Camilla understood the magnitude of what her husband was saying, but she also understood something he seemed unable to grasp. Charles, maybe it's time for people to build their sense of identity on something more honest than carefully maintained lies. Maybe the stability we've been protecting isn't worth the cost we've demanded others pay for it. Through the valley below, she could see security vehicles converging on the village where she had met with Sarah Blackwood. Her location would be discovered soon, and the opportunity to make an independent choice about the documents would disappear. Whatever she decided, it had to happen now. Charles, I love you, and I understand why you see this situation differently than I do, she said, standing up from the stone circle and preparing to walk back toward the village. But I can't continue to be part of a system that sacrifices individual people to protect institutional image. I won't be responsible for silencing these voices any longer. Camilla, please, King Charles began, but she ended the call before he could finish his plea. Her phone immediately began ringing again, but she turned it off and removed the battery, ensuring that her location could not be tracked through the device. The walk back to Ballater took 15 minutes, during which Queen Camilla composed the statement she would give to Sarah Blackwood, along with the documents. She wanted to ensure that the story focused not on sensational revelations about royal scandals, but on the human cost of institutional deception and the importance of acknowledging historical truths that had been buried for too long. Sarah Blackwood was waiting in her car outside the tea shop, having recognized that the increasing security presence in the village meant their window of opportunity was closing rapidly. When Queen Camilla approached the vehicle, the journalist immediately understood from her expression that a decision had been made. I want you to publish the story, Queen Camilla said, handing over the satchel of documents. But I want you to focus on the people whose lives were affected by these deceptions, not on the scandal itself. These aren't just historical curiosities. They represent real individuals who deserved better from the institution they were connected to. Sarah Blackwood accepted the documents with the gravity appropriate to receiving evidence that would reshape British history. Your Majesty, I give you my word that the story will be told with the dignity and respect that these revelations deserve. But I need you to understand that once this information is public, there will be intense scrutiny of your own role in bringing it to light. Queen Camilla looked toward the approaching security vehicles and smiled with surprising serenity. Ms. Blackwood, for the first time in years, I'm not worried about scrutiny. I'm finally telling the truth about something that matters, and whatever consequences follow from that truth are consequences I'm prepared to accept. As Sarah Blackwood drove away with the documents that would transform the British monarchy forever, Queen Camilla sat on a bench in the village center and waited for her security detail to find her. She thought about William Hayes, whose career had been destroyed by his decision to help her pursue the truth. She thought about the people whose stories would finally be acknowledged after decades of institutional silence. When Corporal Jenkins and his team finally located her, they approached with a mixture of relief and apprehension. Queen Camilla greeted them calmly, cooperated fully with their security protocols, and allowed herself to be escorted back to Balmoral Castle without resistance or explanation. By the time they reached the castle, the first news alerts were already appearing on mobile devices around the world. Sarah Blackwood had worked with unprecedented speed to verify and publish the most significant revelations, understanding that delay would only allow official forces to suppress the story. The headlines were stark and uncompromising. Queen Camilla reveals decades of royal family deception. Hidden archives expose systematic cover-ups in British monarchy. Abandoned royal children. The secret history the crown tried to hide. Queen Camilla walked through the castle doors knowing that she had irrevocably changed not only her own life, but the entire institution she had married into. The carefully maintained image of the royal family was crumbling in real time, and there would be no repairing the damage she had chosen to inflict. But as she looked back at the Highland landscape one final time before entering the castle, Queen Camilla felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The peace that comes from finally telling the truth, regardless of the cost. The secrets that had burdened generations of her family were now public knowledge, and the people whose voices had been silenced for decades would finally have their stories acknowledged. The revolution she had started would continue without her, driven by journalists, historians, and ordinary citizens who demanded honesty from their institutions. Queen Camilla had lit a fire that would burn away decades of carefully constructed lies, and while she didn't know what would rise from those ashes, she was certain it would be built on a more honest foundation than what had come before. What to do with the explosive evidence she now carried? The weight of his decision to help her escape felt both crushing and liberating. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I can't follow that order," Jenkins replied, and William could hear multiple sets of footsteps approaching the chamber door. "We're coming in now to secure the area and ensure your safety." William stepped back from the hidden door, which had swung closed automatically behind Queen Camilla, leaving no obvious trace of her escape route. The chamber now looked exactly as it had when they first entered, except for the scattered documents on the central table and the obvious signs that someone had been examining the archived materials. When Jenkins and two other guards entered the chamber with weapons drawn and flashlights sweeping the space, they found William standing alone beside the document-covered table, his hands raised and his expression showing the aftermath of his emotional breakdown. The guards quickly secured the area, checking for threats while Jenkins approached his commanding officer with evident concern. "Sir, where is Her Majesty?" Jenkins asked, lowering his weapon but maintaining a professional alertness. "Our protocols require that we account for all individuals who access this unauthorized area." William looked his subordinate in the eye, preparing to lie to someone who had served under him faithfully for over 3 years. "She was here when I lost control, Jenkins. I'm afraid my reaction to what we discovered in this chamber was unprofessional. When I started shouting, she became frightened and ran back into the passages. I don't know which direction she went." It was a plausible story, and William could see that Jenkins wanted to believe it. The alternative, that their respected commander had deliberately helped the Queen escape with classified materials, was too disturbing for a loyal subordinate to easily accept. But William could also see doubt in Jenkins's eyes, a recognition that something about the situation didn't quite add up. The other guards were now systematically searching the chamber, documenting the materials on the table and checking for additional exits. It would only be a matter of time before they discovered the hidden door and realized that Queen Camilla had escaped through a route that William must have known about. His story would unravel quickly under professional investigation. But for now, Queen Camilla had time to reach safety and decide what to do with the truth she had discovered. William's career was over, his reputation destroyed and his future uncertain. But as he stood in that underground chamber surrounded by evidence of generations of royal deception, he realized he had finally served something more important than protocol and institutional loyalty. He had served the truth even though it might destroy everything he had once believed was worth protecting. The hidden passage had led Queen Camilla through a winding route that seemed to follow the natural contours of the hillside beneath Balmoral Castle. After 20 minutes of careful navigation by phone light, she emerged through a concealed exit hidden behind a cluster of ancient oak trees nearly half a mile from the main castle grounds. The fresh Highland air felt like freedom after the suffocating weight of underground secrets. She found herself on a narrow footpath that local hikers used to explore the surrounding countryside. Her royal clothing looked dramatically out of place in the wilderness setting, but the early morning hour meant she was unlikely to encounter other people. The satchel containing the explosive documents felt heavier with each step, as if the truth it contained was a physical burden that grew more substantial the farther she carried it from its hiding place. Behind her, Balmoral Castle loomed against the grey Scottish sky, looking deceptively peaceful for a place that had just become the center of a crisis that could shake the foundations of the British monarchy. She could see vehicles moving around the castle grounds and knew that William's team was probably conducting an intensive search for her. The loyal sergeant had bought her precious time, but she knew his sacrifice would be discovered soon enough. Queen Camilla made her way to a small village pub called the Highland Rose, which sat beside a narrow road that connected several rural communities. The establishment was just opening for the day, and the elderly proprietor was surprised but delighted to welcome such an unexpected royal visitor. She explained that she was taking an informal walk and had become separated from her security detail, requesting permission to use the telephone. The pub owner, a jovial man named Malcolm Ferguson, was honored to assist and offered her privacy in his small office behind the bar. Queen Camilla used the landline to call a number she had memorized but never expected to use, reaching a secure communications service that connected her directly to investigative journalist Sarah Blackwood, someone known for her fearless reporting on government corruption and institutional cover-ups. "Ms. Blackwood," Queen Camilla said when the journalist answered, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. "This is Queen Camilla. I have information about the royal family that I believe the public has a right to know, and I need your help to ensure it reaches them safely." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Sarah Blackwood had built her career on exposing powerful people who thought they were above accountability. But receiving a call from a member of the royal family offering to reveal state secrets was beyond anything she had ever imagined. "Your Majesty, I need to verify your identity and understand exactly what kind of information we're discussing." Queen Camilla had anticipated this reasonable skepticism. "I can provide verification through methods that will satisfy you, Ms. Blackwood. As for the information, it concerns systematic deception spanning generations of royal history, including falsified genealogies, abandoned family members, and financial arrangements designed to hide inconvenient truths from public scrutiny." The journalist's voice became more focused and professional. "Your Majesty, if what you're suggesting is accurate, we're talking about a story that could fundamentally alter public understanding of the monarchy. Are you prepared for the consequences of such revelations? Are you certain you want to proceed?" Through the small window of Malcolm's office, Queen Camilla could see the morning mist lifting from the Highland Hills, revealing a landscape that had remained essentially unchanged for centuries. The permanence of the natural world contrasted sharply with the fragility of human institutions, built on carefully maintained lies. "Ms. Blackwood, I've spent my entire adult life living a carefully scripted role in someone else's story. I'm tired of protecting lies that have caused real harm to real people." Sarah Blackwood arranged to meet Queen Camilla at a location she specified, a small tea shop in the nearby town of Ballater, that would provide enough privacy for an initial review of the documents. The journalist explained that she would need time to verify the authenticity of any materials and would require corroborating sources before publication. She also warned that other news organizations would quickly pick up any story of this magnitude. While waiting for the meeting, Queen Camilla sat in Malcolm's cozy pub and reflected on the path that had brought her to this moment. She thought about William Hayes, whose career and possibly freedom she had destroyed by involving him in her quest for truth. She thought about the people whose stories were documented in the hidden archive, individuals who had been erased from history to protect an image that was never authentic. Malcolm brought her a cup of tea and a warm scone, refusing any payment and asking only if there was anything else he could do to help. His simple kindness reminded her that ordinary people trusted the monarchy to represent something noble and stable in their lives. Whatever she decided to do with the evidence she had gathered would affect not just the royal family but millions of people who had built their understanding of their country's identity around institutions they believed were fundamentally honest. The weight of that responsibility was almost overwhelming. Queen Camilla had the power to expose decades of deception and give voice to people who had been silenced. But she also had the power to destroy faith in institutions that many people depended on for their sense of social stability. The choice felt impossible, requiring her to weigh abstract principles against concrete human consequences. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Your security detail is expanding their search to include the surrounding area. They will probably reach the village within the hour. Whatever you plan to do, you need to do it quickly. The message was unsigned, but Queen Camilla suspected it came from someone within the castle who sympathized with her mission. Sarah Blackwood arrived at the tea shop precisely on time, a professional-looking woman in her 40s carrying a leather briefcase and a laptop computer. She had brought a photographer and an audio recording device, prepared to document whatever evidence Queen Camilla had gathered. The journalist's expression was serious but not skeptical, suggesting she had already begun to believe that this unprecedented story might be authentic. Queen Camilla spread the most compelling documents across a corner table, explaining the context of each revelation, while Sarah examined them with the careful attention of someone accustomed to evaluating evidence. The photographs were particularly powerful, showing family members who had been completely,